When my mother-in-law, Barbara, showed up at our door with 3 designer suitcases and tears in her eyes, I should have trusted my instincts. But my husband, Mike, was already ushering her inside, falling for the performance I'd later learned she perfected across 3 states. The condo association is forcing everyone out, she sobbed, dabbing her eyes with a Hermes scarf. Something about structural issues. I have nowhere else to go. I'm a real estate attorney. Red flags were waving, but Mike was so worried about his poor mother that he didn't ask the obvious questions, like why she hadn't mentioned this crisis during Sunday dinner last week, or why her emergency evacuation involved carefully packed Louis Vuitton luggage. It's just for a few weeks, Mike assured me, until Mom finds a new place. Those weeks turned into months. Barbara settled into our guest suite like a queen claiming a new kingdom. She rearranged our furniture, criticized my cooking, and somehow managed to make Mike feel guilty for not offering her more support during her crisis. Then came the improvements. "This kitchen is absolutely outdated," she announced one morning. "I've called a contractor to give us an estimate on renovations." "Us?" I asked. "Barbara, this isn't your house." She smiled that patronizing smile I'd come to hate. "Well, dear, since I'm living here and contributing to the household." Contributing? The only thing she contributed was stress and criticism. But behind my back, Barbara had been busy. She paid for new curtains, replaced our perfectly good appliances with high-end models, and even hired landscapers to redo the garden, all without consulting us. "Mom's just trying to help," Mike defended her. "She feels bad about staying with us." Then came the lawsuit. I was served papers at my office, Barbara's ultimate power play. She was suing us for $500,000, claiming she had invested substantially in the property and deserved an equitable ownership interest due to her significant contributions and established residence. The worst part, she'd hired Jeremy Collins, a notorious attorney known for helping relatives claim ownership of family properties. Her lawsuit alleged she'd been invited to make the house her permanent residence and that her improvements constituted an investment partnership. Mike was devastated. "Mom, how could you?" "Darling," she purred, "I'm just protecting my interests. After all, I've put money into this house. It's only fair I get something back." That's when I decided to dig. As a real estate attorney, I had resources, and Barbara had made a serious mistake taking on someone with my connections. It took 3 days of calls and research. What I found was staggering. Barbara Harrison wasn't just an opportunistic mother-in-law. She was a professional scam artist who would pull this exact scheme in multiple states. Her pattern was always the same. Find a family member or friend with a nice home. Manufacture a crisis requiring temporary housing. Move in and start making unauthorized improvements. Sue for partial ownership based on those improvements. Either get a large settlement or force the owners to buy her out. I uncovered 8 previous cases: the Johnsons in Florida, the Clarks in Georgia, the Paddles in Texas. All families who'd taken her in out of kindness, only to find themselves facing legal action. "She's not just your mother," I told Mike as I spread the evidence across our dining room table. "She's a professional con artist who targets families for property scams." The documents told a damning story. Barbara had received settlements totaling over $800,000 from her previous victims. She wasn't some desperate mother in need. She was running a calculated real estate scam. And her emergency evacuation from the condo? Another lie. The building was fine. She'd planned this whole thing, right down to hiring Jeremy Collins before she even moved in. "There's more," I said, pulling out bank statements. "That money she spent on improvements, it came from my last settlement. She's using funds from her previous victims to set up her next scam." Mike sat there, staring at proof of his mother's deceptions, photos of her with other families she'd scammed, court records showing her pattern, bank transfers revealing her scheme. "Why?" he whispered. "She has money. She doesn't need to do this." "It's not about need," I explained. "It's about power. Control. Each family she scams feeds her ego and her bank account." That's when Barbara walked in, already speaking in her new litigation voice. "I hope you're discussing a reasonable settlement. My lawyer says." She stopped cold, seeing the evidence spread across the table. "Hello, Barbara," I smiled. "Or should I call you Barbara Watson? Or Barbara Green? You used both names in Florida, didn't you?" Let's talk about the Johnsons and that lovely settlement you squeezed out of them. For the first time, I saw real fear crack through her sophisticated facade. Those are private legal matters, she began, but I cut her off. Private legal matters that show a clear pattern of fraud, I said. Would you like to explain to Mike how you've run this same scam on 8 other families? How you plan these lawsuits before you even move in? Mike, she turned to her son, slipping into victim mode. Surely you don't believe these ridiculous accusations. I'm your mother. But Mike was holding a photo of Barbara with another family, dated just last year. His hands were shaking. The Paddles, he said quietly. Their son was my age. You did the same thing to them, didn't you? Moved in, caused chaos, sued them for half their house. That was different, Barbara protested, but her performance was cracking. Different how? I asked pleasantly. Different because they settled for $150,000 to make you go away. Different because you used that money to fund your next scam, or different because this time you targeted your own son. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in watching a professional con artist try to regain control. Barbara cycled through her entire playbook of manipulation tactics, each one more desperate than the last. First came the tears. How could you do this to me? She sobbed to Mike. Investigating your own mother? I raised you better than this. When that didn't work, she switched to threats. If you pursue this, I'll have to tell the court about your drinking problem, she hissed at me. What drinking problem? I asked innocently, recording her threat on my phone. The one I'll testify about, she smiled coldly. Who do you think they'll believe? A concerned mother or a hostile daughter-in-law? But Barbara had made a critical error. Her previous victims were more than happy to talk once I found them. She did the exact same thing to us. Sarah Johnson told me over Zoom, her face tight with remembered pain. Moved in after claiming her apartment had black mold. Started renovating without permission. Then sued us for $200,000, claiming she'd invested in our property. The Paddle story was nearly identical. She targeted us through our son's wedding, Mr. Paddle explained. Said she needed a place to stay during the ceremony preparations. 6 months later, we were in court. I compiled their testimonies along with the court records. Barbara's pattern was crystal clear. Month 1. Move in using a manufactured crisis. Months 2 to 3. Make unauthorized improvements. Month 4. Start documenting her contributions to the household. Month 5. Hire a lawyer and prepare the lawsuit. Month 6. Sue for partial ownership or a large settlement. She's got it down to a science, Agent Torres from the FBI's Real Estate Fraud Division told us. She even uses the same contractor in each city, a guy named Pete who inflates the value of her improvements for the lawsuit. Mike was struggling to reconcile the mother he knew with the calculating fraudster in our evidence file. But she was always so generous, he said. Always helping people. That's part of her cover, I explained gently. She builds a reputation for generosity so no one suspects her real motives. Those designer gifts she gives, paid for with money stolen from other families. Barbara's lawyer, Jeremy Collins, showed up at our door with a generous offer to settle. I invited him into my home office and laid out our counter evidence. Your client has a documented history of real estate fraud, I said pleasantly. Would you like to see the pattern, or should I present it directly to the State Bar Association? Collins' face went pale as he reviewed the files. Mrs. Harrison never mentioned. Of course not. Just like she never mentioned the 3 pending investigations in other states, or the fact that her contractor, Pete, is already cooperating with the FBI. The lawyer left quickly, his settlement offer untouched. Barbara's next move was pure desperation. She called a family meeting, inviting Mike's siblings and their spouses. Your brother and his wife are trying to destroy me, she announced dramatically. After everything I've done for this family. But I was ready. I connected my laptop to the TV and started playing videos from her previous victims. Mom, Mike's sister Janet whispered, is that the same speech you gave the Clarks before you sued them? The recordings were damning. Barbara using identical lines, identical tears, identical claims of persecution, just with different families. You've been running this scam for years, Mike realized, even when Dad was alive. Your father never understood business, Barbara snapped, dropping her victim act. Someone had to provide the lifestyle we deserved. That's when her phone buzzed. She checked it, and for the first time, real fear crossed her face. Problems? I asked innocently. Oh, that's probably about your contractor, Pete. He's been very cooperative with the FBI since they found those falsified renovation receipts. Barbara stood up, grabbing her designer purse. This is ridiculous. I don't have to stay here and be accused. Actually, you do, I smiled. The FBI has some questions about wire fraud across state lines, and those agents by our front door? They have a warrant. Sure enough, 2 FBI agents were waiting in our driveway. Barbara's sophisticated facade cracked completely. Mike, she screeched, are you going to let them arrest your mother? But Mike just shook his head, looking at the evidence of her multiple frauds. No, Mom, I'm going to let them arrest a con artist who happens to be my mother. As the agents led her away, Barbara turned to make one final threat. You'll regret this. I have friends in high places. Like Jeremy Collins? I called after her. He's already withdrawn from your case. Apparently, he doesn't want to risk his law license defending documented fraud. Inside, Mike's siblings sat in stunned silence, processing the truth about their mother. The Christmas gifts, Janet said suddenly. Those expensive presents she always gave. She bought them with money stolen from other families. Everything about her was a performance, I confirmed. The generous mother, the helpful houseguest, the victim of circumstance, all characters she played to set up her scams. Mike picked up one of the case files. 8 families, he said quietly. 8 homes she invaded. 8 lawsuits. How did we never know? Because she's good at what she does, I explained. She picks her targets carefully, builds trust, then strikes when they're emotionally invested. Like moving in right after my wedding, Janet realized, or during the Paddles' wedding preparations, she waits for emotional moments when families are most vulnerable. The evidence of Barbara's calculating nature was there in every document. She hadn't just scanned these families, she'd studied them, learned their weaknesses, and struck when they were least likely to question her motives. As we watched the FBI car drive away with Barbara in the back seat, Mike squeezed my hand. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing through her when I couldn't. But our ordeal wasn't over. Because Barbara had one last card to play, and she was about to prove that a cornered con artist is the most dangerous kind. Barbara's final play came from her jail cell, and it was as ruthless as it was desperate. She called every family member, every friend, every business contact in her extensive network, spinning a tale of elder abuse and family betrayal. My own son let them arrest me, she sobbed to anyone who would listen. All because I wanted to help improve their home. That wife of his turned him against me. Then came the social media campaign. Somehow, she managed to get her story picked up by a Facebook group dedicated to mothers wronged by daughters-in-law. Within days, our phones were flooded with hate messages from strangers defending a woman they'd never met. You're going to regret crossing me, she wrote in a letter from jail. I've got nothing left to lose now. She was right about that last part. The FBI investigation had uncovered the full scope of her scams. Total fraudulent settlements, $1.2 million. Families victimized, 12, not just 8, as we initially thought. Properties targeted, 15. States involved, 5. Active investigations, 4. Your mother-in-law wasn't just running a scam, Agent Torres explained during our follow-up meeting. She was operating a sophisticated real estate fraud enterprise. Those improvements she made to each house, all done with unlicensed contractors who kicked back part of the payment to her. Even her designer wardrobe was part of the scheme. She used the stolen money to maintain an image of wealth that made her stories more believable. Who would suspect a woman in Chanel of running a con? The preliminary hearing was a study in Barbara's manipulation tactics. She appeared in court wearing a conservative dress that made her look older and more vulnerable, all traces of her usual glamour carefully erased. I just wanted to be close to my son, she told the judge, her voice trembling. Is it wrong for a mother to help her children? But this time, her performance fell flat. The prosecution had videos of her bragging to her contractor about how easy it was to scam stupid families who trust their relatives. They had bank records showing how she'd moved money between accounts to hide her settlements. Most damning of all, they had her own detailed notes about selecting and targeting victims. Look at this entry, the prosecutor said, highlighting a passage from her notebook. Quote, families going through weddings or babies are easiest to manipulate. Their emotional state makes them less likely to question financial decisions. This wasn't maternal love, Your Honor. This was calculated predation. The judge wasn't impressed by Barbara's tears. "Mrs. Harrison, you didn't just steal money. You stole people's trust in their own families. You turned moments of celebration into opportunities for fraud. This court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison." As they led her away, Barbara made one final attempt to reach Mike. "I'm still your mother. You can't let them do this." But Mike stood firm. "No, Mom, my mother would have loved me enough not to try to destroy my marriage and steal my home." The aftermath brought unexpected healing. Barbara's previous victims formed a support group, helping each other process the unique trauma of being scammed by someone they had trusted as family. The money wasn't the worst part, Sarah Johnson shared during a group meeting. It was realizing that every moment of kindness, every seemingly generous gesture, was just part of her con. Mike's siblings had their own revelations. Janet discovered Barbara had been setting up a similar scam targeting her new house. She was just waiting for the right crisis to exploit, Janet realized, looking at her mother's notes. The FBI seized Barbara's assets, including her designer wardrobe and multiple bank accounts. The funds were used to make partial restitution to her victims, though the emotional damage couldn't be repaid. 1 year later, we held a family dinner, the first one without Barbara's manipulative presence. As we sat around the table she had once tried to claim as her territory, Mike raised his glass. "To truth," he said simply, "and to real family, the kind that loves without schemes." Barbara still writes sometimes, always with a new angle, a new manipulation to try. Her latest letter claims she's found God in prison and wants to make amends. The check she included for partial repayment bounced, of course. But her power over us is gone. Her designer clothes have been auctioned. Her contractor Pete took a plea deal to testify against her, and her network of enablers has crumbled under FBI scrutiny. Sometimes I look at the improvements she made to our house, the fancy appliances, the custom curtains, and consider replacing them. But Mike suggested we keep them. "They're not trophies of her scheme anymore," he said. "They're reminders that we survived her con game and came out stronger." Barbara will be eligible for parole in 6 years. Sometimes I wonder if she spends her days in prison planning her next scam, or if she ever truly regrets targeting her own son. But then I look at our home, truly our home now, free from her schemes, and I realize it doesn't matter. She taught us the hard way that real family isn't about property or possessions. It's about protecting each other from predators, even when those predators share our blood.